welcome back to the 8th annual Halloween special. Today we're talking about a new release film. It's actually on Netflix right now. Vampires vs. the Bronx. Directed by Oz Rodriguez. This film's about a group of young friends from the Bronx who are fighting to save their neighborhood from gentrification and vampires. There's a real estate company called Mero. No doubt inspired by F.W. Mero, who made Nosferatu, and they're buying up all of the houses and buildings in the area. They're forcing everyone to sign over their papers, paying them a hefty sum of money. But as we come to realize, they're also eating them because they're all fucking vampires. And the only people in the neighborhood who know what's going on are these young kids, who band together to try to fight against these vampires to save their neighborhood. This is going to be a bit of a deep cut unless you're a 90s kid. But this is basically the Hey Arnold movie with vampires. That film was also about an evil real estate company that was forcing all the residents of a neighborhood to move out of their beloved homes. And a bunch of kids tried to fight against that from happening, except there wasn't any vampires. Obviously this film is going for a lot of social commentary, and I know that immediately some people nowadays are getting really tired of seeing films that have a message that tries to force it down their throat. Even though films have done that for years, and I think it's just until recently people have started to actually notice. That being said, this is a very funny movie. It's a movie that is extremely lighthearted. And it doesn't want to make anyone feel lesser than, inferior, superior, whatever. It's just a movie that is a lot of fun. The characters in the movie are also really strong. The three main kids in the film are really great together. They have excellent chemistry, and the movie has a lot of style to it. It feels sort of like Attack the Block in that way. There's a lot of energy to the film. The first half of this movie moves really fast. There's a lot of great humor in the film. Method Man is surprisingly hilarious in the movie. Where the movie works significantly is whenever it just lets its characters be. The characters are really entertaining. It's a fun movie to watch. They're all very likable, and I like the 90s sensibility to the movie, and that it's just kind of these kids on an adventure. Nobody believes them at first, but eventually people have to, because people are disappearing. People aren't showing up in mirrors or when they're being filmed, and so something clearly is going on. What I don't like about this movie is almost all of its genre attempts. Pretty much all the vampire stuff comes off very cheesy. Some of the special effects are actually kind of awful. There's one shot of one of the vampires flying and following the kids. That looked like a comedy sketch, and that would make sense, because this director has worked extensively with Saturday Night Live. Whenever the vampires are sped up so they move really fast, it's extremely obvious the effects work in the movie is really poor. It really took me out of the experience of the film. And unfortunately the last 20 to 30 minutes of the movie have a lot of coincidences that just happen. Characters show up in places where the other characters are when they had no idea that those characters were there. Crowds of people who suddenly have all this information just show up, and it somehow feels perfect and squeaky clean, and I just didn't buy it. It felt like the writers didn't know how to get some characters to certain places. But they knew they had to be there, and so they just had them show up, and that was unfortunate. Because for the first half the film I was actually really on board. But it seems like after a while they ran out of ideas for what these kids could possibly do. Once they break into a crypt and try to tell people that there are vampires and people don't believe them. There's only so many more encounters that they can have with vampires before they get to the big final encounter, and it feels like they were running out of ideas, unfortunately. It also has one too many subplots. They try to give each kid something that's happening in their lives, and it doesn't really lead to anything. There's one subplot that I guess is important from the perspective of showing what some youth go through. But one of the kids is being tempted to join a gang. And that gang is trying to get him to do some stuff with guns. And it feels out of place in the rest of the movie, which is highly comedic. And the arc for that situation also feels very random and throwaway. But the strengths of the movie are no doubt its performances. Its first half is actually pretty funny. Method Man is actually kind of hilarious as a priest. Which is that's just funny on its own. But that last half featured a series of coincidences that just didn't work for me, as well as some really horrendous special effects work. I'm gonna give Vampires vs. the Bronx a C+. I do recommend checking it out, especially if you're in a Halloween mood. Because it's a fun movie, it could have been a lot better, I think. It's on Netflix right now. Thank you so much for watching. Woof woof.